I'm going to go over the bottleneck exercise which I have been doing within the company for the past few weeks that has allowed for me to discover some of the biggest bottlenecks within the company and has allowed for me to move with immense speed to solve the bottlenecks, and has basically allowed for things in operations to be a bit more smooth on my side as well, and has allowed for me to see as to what key hires we need within the company. And it's a very, very simple exercise. I like keeping things extremely simple, and I like keeping things as simple as possible, basically. And all you really need is a note and paper. The reason that's why I'm using note and papers right now is because I don't have my computer. So you can do this on your computer as well. It's usually where I do it. You can mix it with AI as well. But what I like doing is I like writing down the five or six of the biggest bottlenecks within the week, and then basically just writing them out, like whatever the biggest bottleneck was that week, whether it be a fuck up with a client, whether it be not hitting a KPI for somebody. And this is at a company level, because as to how I like spreading it out is we have company-wide level bottlenecks, like basically patterns within certain clients. Like if multiple clients are complaining about one thing or multiple clients are having a certain issue, that's a company level bottleneck. But some clients have specific bottlenecks that deserve different attention, basically. So I like thinking about it from a bird's eye perspective, and I also like getting into the details, but I like basically taking out the biggest bottlenecks that are going to allow for everyone else to be able to take on the smaller bottlenecks. But what I like doing is basically just writing them out, and then it's a lot of the time it's mainly just thinking. And then after that, what I like doing is I like thinking of solutions and owners to them. So it's not necessarily just writing out what the bottlenecks are, but actually thinking through a viable solution and assigning a certain person to it, and then seeing as to where that bottleneck actually is. So for example, in the company, we have stations. It's 6 stations, and each station has a specific owner. So for onboarding station, for whenever we onboard a new client, we have the client success manager that is in charge of that. And whenever there's a specific bottleneck within that station, it's usually depending on as to what the bottleneck actually is, but it's on the client success manager for them to fix. Or if it's absorption, which is an issue as to which you've been having, what I mean by absorption is understanding the client's ICP. For new people within the company, is being able to absorb the client's information, the client's ICP at a faster level, basically, so that we can create a crafted strategy for them based off what the ICP actually wants and as to how we're actually going to get sales for them. But that's one of the things, is actually thinking through what the bottlenecks are and assigning a specific owner. So for example, right here I wrote tech issues. We've had a lot of tech issues for clients, that being on Go High Level. So what we have a specific owner for Go High Level stuff and Protect, and I'm thinking through what is it right now that's broken. And after kind of looking through all the mistakes, the biggest issue that we have is not enforcing QC. So one of the things that's what we will be doing to enforce QC is points. So whenever there's a new fuck up, what we'll do is we'll be taking off points, and once they get a certain amount of points deducted, I don't want to say that they're going to get fired, but obviously if there's multiple fuck-ups, then there's going to be people firing. And that's exactly what happened in this case. We're going to be finding a new tech person, and another thing is enforcing quality checks. So the growth operator, who's the one that's in charge of the funnel, is paired up with a Go High Level developer. And what's going to happen is the growth operator is going to be enforced as a backup and still run everything through a third round of QC. So that's one of the things. So I wrote it down here I wrote the bottleneck up here, tech issues, and then at the bottom I have recurring. So I have to find a new Go High Level, enforce quality checks and points. And then for the second thing is emails hitting spam, another thing. Technically goes with tech issues, but the biggest thing as to which I like doing for this is writing out everything. Like a lot of the times it's overrated, it's underrated as to how important writing stuff actually is. Especially in compared to typing, is you can actually get a feel for what you're putting on paper, and you basically actually think about if this thing's actually a bottleneck. So every single thing as to which I have here is something as to which I have thought about for the past 30 days. And actually not 30 days, like 2 weeks, I'll say. In contrast to whenever I'm typing, I can type at a much faster rate or speak at a much faster rate than I can actually write at. So whenever I'm writing something out, it's a lot more condensed and a lot more thought through. The same thing with warm-up campaigns. So I've got all the bottlenecks here, all of them with an assigned owner as to who it is that needs to enforce something, or as to who's assigned for this bottleneck. So not enforcing KPIs, that is on the creatives and on the client success manager who owns the accounts, understands ICP, that's on the creatives and the growth operators. Lack of absorption for people using the new infrastructure as to which we're building out, that's on the developers for them to actually force absorption. SMS and email cap issues, that's also on the Go High Level development. And then strategy drop off. So basically what that means is we stick to a strategy for a certain period of time, but then after that we kind of tend to stray somewhere else. So what happens to that is also enforcement. So what that falls in on is on the creatives actually sticking to their strategy. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the KPIs. So if someone isn't hitting KPIs, or KPIs are under hit, it's being on top of that shit. So it's very, very transparent as to what I like doing, either typing it out or not doing it. And then another thing that is a good bottleneck identifier for the client specific level is as to how we have it is 5 specific things. So every single client has obviously one specific station: onboarding, strategy, production, distribution, conversion, and then reporting. And then out of each of those things, what we do is we do weekly reports. So seeing as to where the biggest bottlenecks within each station was for each client, and then seeing as to what the bottleneck was, is in charge of that bottleneck, or whose fault it was that something broke, and then as to what the comparison actually is. For a KPI, for example, is the KPI is 1,000 leads for the month, and we only got 500 leads. And then seeing as to why did we get 500 leads for the month? Maybe it's a fault of alignment on the call to actions and what the actual lead magnet is, for example. And then it's kind of coming up with a solution for that and hoarding that biggest bottleneck and always going after the biggest bottleneck that is in front of you. That way you can kind of just keep things progressing. Because what happens is, and this has happened to me so many fucking times, there's a small little bottleneck, it's easy to fix, and you go after it. But a huge bottleneck that is so it's hard and it takes time to overcome. So what you do is you go after the smaller bottlenecks, because you get that hit of you get that dopamine hit because you're solving little problems, but you're ignoring the biggest bottleneck that is going to allow for those smaller ones to also go away. So that is something as to which, like, I personally also need to improve on, is actually looking at what the biggest bottleneck is within a certain moment and then going after it, hoarding all of your attention. This is where Jensen's, or actually I think it's Musk's, tip of the spear attention goes into, and just hoarding your greatest opportunity. But in this situation, is hoarding your greatest bottleneck. But yeah, bottlenecks, destroy them.